Thank you for joining Jennifer Shelton Associates in our 2019 Webinar Wednesday series. We are coming to you live from downtown Washington, D.C. Our webinars are every Wednesday, and you can find the upcoming schedule on our website. Past webinars and all recordings are also on our website and our YouTube channel, along with over 160 other recordings on federal contracting topics. All are complimentary. If you have questions for our speaker today, you can email her directly by contact information you'll see on the last slide. Right, just a little bit about us. We are a Washington, D.C. based firm and provide services for federal contractors. This ranges from market analysis reports to proposal writing and also poster board compliance. More information is on our website, so please visit us there. This is an upcoming event that you can find more information on our website or here. And we do offer advertising, so you can send me an email if you would like more information on that. And our speaker today is Marsha Lindquist. She's going to be covering proposal pricing, Make It Count. Thank you for joining us today, Marsha, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. I think it's really important to know that proposal pricing really matters, and a lot of people will submit their pricing and hope for the best. Other people will submit their pricing having done a lot of homework. We're going to talk today about some things that can set you apart from your competitors, what I call making it count. So on the next slide, we're going to show you what we're going to talk about today. So how can you have your pricing stand out? Well, there are 5 parts of this today that I want to talk about. Being compliant, making it easy to evaluate and be well documented, making sure that you have a business value proposition in your business volume, making sure that there is an executive summary unless it's expressly not allowed, and making sure that you have pricing visuals. And we'll talk about each one of these. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about compliance. So what do I mean by that? Everybody reads Section L, Section M, but they sometimes neglect the other important sections of the RFP. As a business person, a lot of times I hear, well, you got to read the performance work statement. You've got to read the attachments. While I do read those, I want to emphasize that as a pricing person, you should be and may be the only person that reads the other sections of the RFP. What I mean by that is sections A through K, and most importantly, the other sections that oftentimes have things hidden in them, like Section H, like Section I, and sometimes Section G. Certainly Section B, where the pricing will go, is also an important section. But a lot of times, like on one of the ones that I'm working on right now, there is no place to actually put your pricing in there because they've not given it to the responders. And so you've got to fill in Section B, which is the prices. So read all the sections, pay particular attention to L and M certainly, but pay an immediate attention to B and H, and sometimes G and I as well. Of course, the contracts people will want to look at Section K for the representations and certifications. Here's the thing. When you are responding to be compliant, you have to respond with what was asked, not what you thought was asked. This is a question so often that I have to ask our clients to respond to, because a lot of times what the technical people want to do is to answer what they thought was asked rather than what was in the RFP. So you have to make sure that you give the government what they've asked for. You may want to give them other things, but certainly at least respond to what was asked for. I suggest pricing documentation that was required and asked for certainly be responded to. I recommend, to be compliant, you design a compliance matrix for the business volume so that you make sure that you cover each and every sentence in Section L and M, and sometimes what was in B and H, as I talked about. Make sure that you give them all the pricing documentation that was required and asked for. In the next slide, we're going to talk about how you make it easy for the evaluator to read, evaluate, and certainly say, how could I say this? Easy for them to say they've given me everything that I've asked for and more. By making it easy for the evaluator, you make it easy for them to not come back to you with questions. To do that, you have to do number 2, which is backup documentation. Please don't get an attitude about this and say, oh, well, if they didn't ask me for it, I'm not going to give it to them. If you think that giving them that backup documentation will make it easier for them to evaluate, then give it to them. They're going to come back and ask you for it anyway. And some of you are saying, well, why didn't they ask me for it in the first place? A lot of times they just don't think about it. But if it's backup documentation that will make it easy for them to understand what you've given them, give it to them. I can point to the easiest example would be if they've asked you for your indirect rates. If they've asked you for documentation on pools, expenses, and basis, then give them that documentation that they've asked for. Don't just say, well, we'll wait till they come back and ask us for it. Give it to them in the first place. Don't get an attitude about it. On number 3 here, you want to make sure that you do your own market research and analysis on items that you may have to purchase, or items like travel, airfares, that kind of thing. You want to make sure that you go out into the marketplace. Don't guess at the information. If you put in, $1,000 for airfare, make sure that that's backed up by documentation that you've obtained in market research through your online searches. Do your own analysis and make sure that you have everything that will back up the quotes that you're given. If you're quoting $50,000 for a piece of software, then go get that documentation. And if it's $49,500, then put in $40,900, not $50,000. Okay, I can definitely say that if you can give them, the evaluator, guidance on your references. In other words, if you do a summary level table of your costs and pricing, put on the side a little reference where they can find the backup to that. This is an old FAR Part 15.2 table where they'd ask you for the reference. So if you've got a summary and you've got labor, indicate on the supporting schedules where you would find the labor detail. That's got to be your guidance on the references so that you know that you've got all of the documentation that we talked about in number 2 above. The other thing is the narrative. A lot of times our business folks like to write, shall I say, in very, very strict, stringent phrases. It's not as easy to read. So I would ask you to test the readability of what you're writing in the narrative with perhaps an outside source who doesn't ordinarily see what you write. And if they can understand it, then you're good to go. Let's go on to the next slide where we talk about the business value proposition. Here's the thing. In order to propose a good business value proposition, you have to ask quality questions of your customer. As soon as you are guessing at what's important to them to find out where their hot buttons are, then you are really not knowing what is their pain point. You got to find out that next line there. You got to find out what's working for them, what's not working for them, what they need, what they're getting today, what they're not getting today, how you can improve, what's going on for them, and how much would they be willing to pay for that additional value. Always ask what else. Number 2, if you've asked your customer what else is important to you, what is working for you, what do you need, as soon as they answer and you've given them a chance to respond to your question, ask them one more time. If you ask what else one more time and they say nothing, you're done. But you've asked them every single time what else is important to them, okay? The most important part of designing your business value proposition is finding out whether the customer what the customer needs. You got to find out whether the competitors do it or have done it for them, or do or do not have that solution. But if you have that solution, then you have a unique way of saying that you can give them additional value proposition, meaning something that the customer wants and needs that they're not getting from any other competitors, and you can deliver to them. Find out how much value it would be to them. You may not necessarily price this into your solution, but you would certainly want to cover it in what's going to be one of our next topics, which is on executive summary. But don't go there yet, because I want to talk about your value proposition should talk about the features and benefits that you are offering, the features of why you, and the benefits answer the question, who cares? You need to come up with 2, 3, 4 features and benefits that can address the why us and who cares part of this. Then, of course, put a dollar value on it. Like I said, you may not want to put it into your pricing if it's something that's unique and different and the customer has not asked for it. Remember back on compliance. If they've not asked for it, don't put it in your pricing, but you want to do it in your executive summary, which is our next chart. In our executive summary, so if we go on to the next slide, then we're going to be talking about syncing up your executive summary with your cost narrative, okay? This is where you have a one-pager or so that summarizes the business value proposition that your customer cares about. This is all of that homework we've just talked about in the last slide. You want to make sure it's in concert with your cost narrative, and you want to make sure that you, number 2 here, address your value add items, the value that you add in some dollar terms. Again, maybe not something that you price into your solution, but you want to let them know the value of that. For example, if you have a timing or schedule improvement and it's worth a month's worth of time, that has a dollar value on it. You may put it into your pricing, but you want to highlight it in your executive summary. You want to make sure that you cover the values that your customer cares about over and above the requirements. This is really critical and important to highlight because your competition may or may not do this. Most likely will not. All right, on the next slide, I'm going to talk about an important point, and that is I want you to have visuals in your business or pricing volume. Do you know that 65% of the population are visual learners? So if you have this great big gray wall of text and no visuals in your business volume, I'm telling you, your evaluator's eyes will glaze over. If you put some visuals in there, then you will make a friend and an evaluator who really wants to read on and looks forward to reading your volume. It has to be more than the time, what I refer to as the time after time mind-numbing schedules that they've asked for. You got to do that. You got to be responsive and be compliant. But I want you to think about what's in number 3. Exciting tables that summarize some data that points out a highlight of your proposal. A price point that they want to know about and you want to tell them about. I want you to put in some graphics that jump off the page at somebody that will show them the value of what it is that you are bringing to the table. And of course, infographics that deliver comparisons between what you've done before and what you're going to do for this customer. If you want to know what an infographic looks like, pull up the front page of a USA Today and look in the lower left-hand corner on the bottom fold, and you'll see an infographic. That's what I'm talking about. So on the next slide, let's talk about all of our takeaways today. Make sure that you give in your compliance part of this, what was asked for, not what you thought was asked. Make sure you do a compliance matrix and have a checklist that you can go through to say when you have complied with everything. Make it very easy for the evaluator to go get everything that they want and see all the documentation that you have. Again, if the customer needs it, your competitors don't have it, but you do, you've got something unique that's of value to the customer. Again, values have to be something the customer cares about over and above the requirements. Don't forget the what else. Find out from your customer what they care about. Again, the most important part of those visuals are that you have exciting tables other than the ones they've asked for, that maybe summarize some of the important data points, and that you have graphics that jump off the page that convey a message more than a gray wall of text, and two, that maybe you have infographics that will show how you have done something similar to what you are talking about for this customer, where you've done it in the past and you're going to do it for this customer in the future. And that's all I've got for today. I thank you all for attending. Please see my contact information on this slide right here. And we will look forward to emails from people mostly. That's the best way to get in touch with me. Thank you again.
Thank you, Marcia, for sharing your knowledge and insight today. Today's presentation has been recorded and can be found on our website or YouTube channel within about 48 hours. If you have questions about today's topic, please contact Marcia at the phone number or email shown on your screen. Thank you, everybody. This concludes the webinar.